So in my last video, we got things started on this topic, and today we're here to wrap it up. Basically, what we're doing is running through every single NBA team, picking out the one player that they need to trade away the most before the trade deadline. Some teams are obviously more well-equipped to accomplish their goals than others, so not everyone needs to take a big swing in the coming week, but no team is perfect, and there is always room for improvement, so the selections made in this video will reflect that. Last video, we went through the teams in the Eastern Conference, so be sure to go watch that one after you watch this one, but now in today's video, we'll be going through each of the teams in the Western Conference. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Going in alphabetical order, we'll be starting with the Dallas Mavericks, and the player they need to trade before the trade deadline this year is Dante Exum. The Mavericks got pretty aggressive at the trade deadline last season, and it resulted in them making a run to the NBA Finals. Because of the fact that they still have that same core, along with a few key acquisitions that they made in free agency, I don't see them going crazy at the deadline this year, with their main goal being to get their team healthy. But if they wanted to get a smaller deal done, Dante Exum could be used as bait as a fantastic defensive talent who just hasn't been able to stay healthy this year. Next is the Denver Nuggets, and the player they need to trade before the trade deadline this year is Michael Porter Jr. Porter Jr. is a tremendous shooter of the basketball at 6'10", but he struggles to impact the game in many other ways. His defensive effort isn't always there, he typically doesn't pass the ball unless he absolutely has to, and he's not enough of a shot creator off the dribble to justify the max contract that he's being paid. The Nuggets have reportedly been interested in taking a swing at one of the bigger names available on the trade market, and Porter will likely be a necessary piece in any of those offers. Next is the Golden State Warriors, and the player they need to trade before the trade deadline is Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins is being paid big money over the next 3 years, and after playing a big part in them winning a championship a few seasons ago, his play has noticeably declined. He's still an above-average secondary scoring threat who sporadically has some big games here and there, and the Warriors' season as a whole, though, is approaching the danger zone, and if they want to make a big splash on the market, Wiggins is going to have to be the piece that gets moved for the sake of both fairness and to make the money work in the deal. Next is the Houston Rockets, and the player they should look to trade before the deadline is Jock Landale. Ever since Steven Adams has recovered from his injury, Landale has been losing his spot as the backup center. The Rockets are one of the league's most pleasant surprises this year, joining the ranks of other contenders at the top of the standings, and seem comfortable keeping their main core together through the end of the season. So a smaller trade finding Landale a home where he could get more consistent minutes in exchange for maybe some draft capital or another role player seems most realistic. Next is the Los Angeles Clippers, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Terrence Mann. There was once a time where the Clippers were labeling Mann as untouchable in trades, but now he's not even in the team's starting lineup anymore, playing fewer than 20 minutes per game. The Clippers are another surprisingly good team this season, and if they want to capitalize on this momentum and bolster their rotation, Mann could draw some interest on the open market for sure, now that he's a bit more expendable. Next is the Los Angeles Lakers, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Jared Vanderbilt. The Lakers have already moved D'Angelo Russell, so their big deal already happened, but with Vanderbilt, he just has not been reliable enough to continue playing the waiting game with. When he's been on the court for the Lakers, he's been underwhelming, and he can't seem to stay healthy, so it would be best for everybody if they could move him for a piece that can actually contribute now. Next is the Memphis Grizzlies, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart's time in Memphis just has not been what many anticipated it to be at all, and now the Grizzlies are proving on the court that they don't even need him necessarily to be successful. They're a deep group already as is, with a rotation that plays pretty well together as currently constructed, so if there was a move to be made that could improve the team, Smart would both carry plenty of value and interest in the trade market and make sense to use as trade bait. Next is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Julius Randle. The Wolves may have just traded for Randle this offseason, but the pairing just has not worked very well at all, and with him having a player option to become a free agent this upcoming offseason, the Wolves are running out of time to figure things out. It's unlikely that he's going to be a part of the team's long-term plans, so it's better to just admit defeat rather than to fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. Next is the New Orleans Pelicans, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Brandon Ingram. Ingram's been a prime trade candidate for a while now, as similar to the situation we just discussed with the Timberwolves, the Pelicans seem to have made it clear they don't view Ingram as part of their plans moving forward, and with this being the last year of his current contract, they need to make something happen quickly, or else he'll walk in free agency for no return. Next is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the player they should trade before the deadline is Kenrich Williams. The Thunder have assets to make a huge trade, but with how good they've been this year, it doesn't seem likely that they're going to take that big swing. Instead, Kenrich Williams has become a bit expendable in their rotation, but is still a reliable two-way role player that another team may find more value in for a more fringe-type trade. Next is the Phoenix Suns, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Bradley Beal. Now, just because Beal is the one that needs to be traded doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be easy. Trading for him in the first place is proving to be a mistake for Phoenix, as his play on the court does not come close to justifying the massive supermax contract taking up a large chunk of the team's salary cap, and with the no trade clause that he has as well, shedding that salary is going to be even tougher. In an ideal world, they find a team willing to trade for him that he actually wants to go to generate some flexibility moving forward, but we'll see if that actually becomes reality. Next is the Portland Trail Blazers, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Jeremy Grant. Grant is the type of talent who has had some big years over the last few seasons, but is now struggling to stay motivated with his timeline as a 30-year-old not quite matching up to the rebuild that his team is currently going through. A change of scenery would rejuvenate his career, allowing him to play more meaningful basketball again, and the Blazers would get some useful assets back in return for him. Next is the Sacramento Kings, and the player they need to trade at the deadline is De'Aaron Fox. Fox is probably the best player available on the trade market this week, having just requested a trade according to reports. He's finally become fed up with being stuck in the limbo that is the Kings organization, and several teams in need of an elite point guard will definitely be reaching out to try to land him, so a blockbuster deal seems imminent. Next is the San Antonio Spurs, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is Keldon Johnson. Johnson was once a 22-point-per-game scorer a few seasons ago, but ever since then, he has been trending in the wrong direction year after year, and now he's not even the first player off the bench for the Spurs. He's the most likely player to be included in any big offer the Spurs make to potentially land someone like maybe a De'Aaron Fox, and whoever trades for him will try to hone in on Johnson's athleticism and aggressive finishing ability. And finally, the last team in the West is the Utah Jazz, and the player they need to trade before the deadline is John Collins. Collins struggled a bit to fit in when he came to Utah last season, but this year, he's reshaping his game and is back playing at a high level. As a 27-year-old big man who can reliably space the floor, work the pick and roll, and rebound well, playoff contenders in need of front court bolstering will definitely be intrigued by his services, and the Jazz would be happy to sell for more long-term assets. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below which teams you think would trade for these players. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.